There we go.
Great. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see
Been a
you. How
while.
are you doing?
Very well. We're
It's
having a pretty good life here in New Mexico.
I was gonna say the last time I think that we had a chat, you guys had just moved.
God, was it that long ago?
It
Yeah.
was a long time ago.
Oh, well, great. So, terrific. How is the Kickstarter going?
It's going well, yeah. We've got a good pace to the first week, and we've got these chats booked throughout the campaign with all of the different artists. I think it's always helpful to give people some insight into how the bread is made,
Oh, sure.
but also just to like have people feel like a connection to the projects. And I think it's always helpful to be able to hear from the people that are working on them. Speaking of Kickstarter, I know that you just finished one. I was happy to back the latest
Oh, I appreciate that.
art book, coffee table book. How would you describe it?
Well, it's a collection of the drawings I've been doing over the past couple of years, just absurd stuff that pops into my head. It's certainly different for me because everything else I've done on Kickstarter has been in the graphic novel vein. So we thought we'd give this a try, and it's worked very well.
That's great. Now I think you're talking about the Victorian murder and the 20th century murder books as well. Like those are, I know you've done some of those on Kickstarter.
Well, no, those were actually put out by an actual publisher, NBM in New York.
Am I thinking of just general murder books then?
Yeah, I've done like three books about famous murder cases on Kickstarter. Those
Okay,
are
that's what
some,
I'm thinking of.
yeah, as well as uh, historical books about the area where I live in New Mexico, the Lincoln County War and the death of Billy the Kid.
And so when you're thinking about sort of that piece, I'm always struck by you were really way ahead of your time, because now we have all of these true crime podcasts and such, and
Lately, yeah, true crime have just exploded over the past several years, and so I like to think that I was a bit of a pioneer in that.
I think it's very safe to say that you are. So for you, like what does being on Kickstarter mean for you?
Well, I've done 8 books on Kickstarter now, I believe, maybe 9. Anyway, it's always worked out very well for me, and I've been able to get my books out there, and I haven't been able to get them into mainstream bookstores or anything like that. Not that I've really tried. I sell them, just off of my website and through through word of mouth, pretty much, and at some local retailers here in New Mexico. But I just have had a very fruitful and satisfying experience with Kickstarter for the past, I think 2012 was the first time so it's almost 10 years. So I have no complaints.
It's funny because I was looking back through, I call them artifacts, but they're just the books and the sort of supporting documents in preparation for our chat today. And I was struck by that it has been 20 years since Blanche Goes to Paris. And before that, it had been maybe a couple of years in between Hollywood, Blanche Goes to Hollywood and Blanche Goes to Paris. And so, there's a gap, and even with the Brontes that I wrote and you did the art for, there was a big gap in between. It just took me a while to get it finished. And So, you know, we've been around a while.
For sure, don't remind me.
Well, I say that because, you know, when I do these talks, I know that people will join or listen and are interested in sort of not just the process and not just what goes into it, but how to navigate what you were just talking about, that the sort of peaks and the valleys of a long-term career, right? Like
Yeah.
some books are done with publishers, some are done on your own by a Kickstarter, some are word of mouth and in local shops, and some are in bookstores, and it's sort of a mixed bag. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how you've managed that, or how you view your happiness and sort of that overall success that we all have our own different definitions of.
Well, we certainly do. I don't know. My definition is that I'm able to keep producing work that I enjoy and satisfies me. And I'm lucky that I have a friend who helps me out, Mark Rosenbaum, who lives in New Orleans and who's a master production artist, and who really can navigate the ins and outs of internet publishing and selling. And he's the one who handles my Kickstarter campaigns. And he's also just been incredibly helpful and in getting my work out there. He designed my website and things like that. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. He's yeah, a master.
So would you say that Kickstarter um, has it changed your sort of view of um, a career, a body of work, the sort of peaks and valleys? How has that fit into your production of work that excites you and you're happy about?
Well, Kickstarter came along or rather I came along to Kickstarter at just the right time. I think I had this New York publisher, NBM, that I was kind of becoming unhappy with, because I did like 16 books with them. And for what I think has been very little recompense, although the books have gotten out there and they've made a kind of a reputation for me, I got a little burned out with them.
Mhm.
So I felt that self-publishing was the next logical step. I've kind of slowed down my production of work. I take jobs that come along, but I don't really seek them out in any active way. And the Kickstarter projects are something that keeps me busy and has provided a kind of a little niche marketplace for me, for the people who appreciate my how shall I say it, idiosyncratic on history and true crime cases. So I think it's fit in perfectly with how I want to guide my career along as I as I approach old age.
I'm curious, you mentioned burnout, and I know that's definitely part of the experience of creating, but even just like the sort of body toll that creating artwork, sitting in one position and the impact on our bodies. How do you manage that in terms of just thinking about the health that you need to maintain to keep creating? Because I know a lot of people don't really pay attention to that, and then wind up with carpal tunnel or worse.
Yeah, I feel I've been very lucky so far, and I tell people that I've made a bargain with my body. As long as I have my eyesight and my left hand, everything else can go. But I have to say that as I've grown older, I've gotten a lot more conscious of my food intake and about getting regular exercise. I bicycle now every day, or hopefully every day. So that keeps me up and about, and I'm at my drawing table every morning, and I put in 8-hour days. And even if I don't have a money-making job in front of me, I do other stuff. I do fun stuff or projects that that I just think ought to be drawn on paper for one reason or another.
Yeah. So you are generally you're on the morning schedule then.
Absolutely. I'm usually up at 5 a.m. No, that's, everyone winces when they hear that. And so then I fade away a little in the afternoon and then come back for another burst of activity in the late afternoon.
Yeah.
And so it all, it all works out. But yeah, I find I'm at my best energy in the mornings.
That's great. I think, anytime that I'm doing one of these chats, I always think it's process is something that I really like to get into, and part of that is just like how do you manage your schedule, and I think part of that is everybody has to find the right time of the day that works for them in terms of creating work, and while I wince at 5 a.m. I find that I'm generally doing work kind of late at night, and it just always has been that way, and there's no right or wrong with your body clock. You have to find the right time for you. But I think what I took away from what you just said is that it's consistent work, that you, whether there's a project that is deadline oriented or it's just a fun project, that you're continuing the work no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's very important. The process is everything, because once my work is in print, I can barely stand to look at it. All I see are mistakes I've made or what I would have done differently. So that's why every new project excites me all over again.
But I think that's also important to know too, right? Like, it's very easy to go back and second guess or to
I try to avoid that, but it's inevitable.
It is inevitable, and one of the lessons that I have learned that has made me happier with that idea of continuing to look at old work is that you're essentially capturing a moment in time. That was the you of that moment that it was finished, and you continue to learn and grow, and you would do it differently today, but it was not created as the you of today, it was the you of yesteryear. And in that way, I find that it's comforting, because what it means is you're continuing to grow, and you see that growth.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, I've been looking over a lot of my old work lately for this project, this Comic-Con Begins project, and boy, it's certainly weird to see how the style has changed over the years. I can't help thinking I've gotten better over the years, but there is the same amount of concentration and intensity in those early drawings as well. So,
can you talk a little bit about the Comic-Con Begins project?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to?
Pardon me?
Are you allowed to?
Oh, well, yeah, as little as I know about it. It's a guy named Matthew Klickstein, who is putting together a podcast, and he did audio interviews with as many of the original Comic-Con founders and people who were around at the beginning. I didn't actually go the first time until 1976, so it was already well underway. But I was able to provide him a little background on some of the early designs that I had done for the attendee badges and the program book and the creation of the toucan character. And now it's they've done the podcast, has been out there a while, and now they're going to do an accompanying volume, a printed volume, to supplement it. And that's why I was looking through a lot of my old art that they would consider printing in the book.
I think that's amazing because, you know, the Comic-Con of today is decidedly not the Comic-Con of yesteryear. I think the sort of nature of shows has changed, and you know, I don't say that's a good thing or a bad thing. That just change is inevitable. But how have you kind of seen what stands out to you as part of that transformation?
Oh gosh, I think it was the mid '90s when Hollywood discovered in a big way comic books as source material, and it took over the con in a big way, and the comic and publishing end of it was shoved a little to the side. It seems like the Hollywood the programs and the panels on new productions that attracts most of the crowd these days. And then they all kind of wander, hopefully, into the dealer's floor, into the exhibition room. And I found that the new influx of people has certainly helped raise consciousness about comics and graphic novels, and they're bigger than ever now. And I was an exhibitor for 20 years, and I've decided to kind of retire from being an exhibitor. It's becoming just too much of a physical schlep.
For sure.
But I'll still be an attendee. I'll definitely go there what years I can. Although, you know, this year and last year certainly put a halt to things. So it'll be interesting to see what incarnation it will reemerge as.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why you just said two things that I want to touch on. One of the reasons to be doing these Kickstarters is that we can't do shows right now, and so to be able to put books in people's hands so that we've got material that we can read, but also to make sure that, you know, artists can continue to create books. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm thrilled that we can put a new issue of Blanche in people's hands. And to that, you know, you identified that there's a new influx of people, and I think where we're really starting to see that is in the middle grade and young adult arena. And I think I have always thought this, and again, you were way ahead of yourself. Well, not you weren't ahead of yourself, you were ahead of like the rest of us, in that like Blanche really provides a strong female character that can appeal to a range of ages, particularly like young women. And I think since we did Paris back in 2000, you know, I have nieces now, and and they're very into comics, and I always think, you know, what would I give them to read? And Blanche is always certainly something that's at the top of that list. And so is that something that you've thought about at all in terms of like who's the audience for Blanche? Was that part of your original intent when you created it, or is that just a result of this new kind of influx of young readers?
Well, this is I've always been drawn to strong female characters, and Blanche, as I might have mentioned to you years ago, is based on my grandmother ever so slightly. And I wanted to elaborate on her and create adventures for her, and make a strong and determined character the center of it. And as far as the age group is concerned, I don't know. My work is I don't know, it's been described as wholesome. I don't lean on graphic sex or violence or anything like that. It's all very innocent, and that's kind of what my mind runs to, I guess. That's just the way my creativity goes. And so I think of a lot of my work has come together, even the Victorian murder books and 20th century murder have ended up in high school libraries, and they've been thought of as suitable for young readers, and that's that's fine with me. I love that. Um, I've it's just the way, it's just the direction I go. I can't really explain it any better than.
So in terms of, Blanche and the origins, you're absolutely right. We talked about how it was based on your grandmother. And when Dark Horse a couple of years ago did the collection of the first 3 issues,
Right.
you got to do that little introductory story that kind of dug into that a little bit. So talk to me a little bit about, and everybody that's listening or will be listening, a little bit more about like what that origin was like.
Um, well, my grandmother, my mother's mother, who lived in a tiny town in Kansas, I would go down and visit her every summer, and it was just, I thought of it as a magical place. And she had this roomy old house and closets full of old family records and photos and letters, and she let me kind of sort through all this stuff and she wanted unloaded, I'm sure. She take a lot of stuff back home with me. And I found some souvenirs from her. She visited New York briefly in the year 1907 and took music lessons there. And she brought home some, items from her trip. The one I remember most is a napkin from a Chinese restaurant, which had Chinese characters printed on it. And she saved this napkin for like 50 plus years. And I thought it was fascinating. And that's the kernel, that's the germ of what put me on this track of sending her to various places. And with lots of made-up adventures and historical characters entering into it, which people she never met, of course. But that's half the fun of it for me, bringing in actual historic events and people as part of the drama.
And so to that, the first issue for people that are just maybe learning about Blanche is Blanche Goes to New York, which is I think sort of that impetus, right? What that you just described. She goes to take some lessons. The second issue is Blanche Goes to Hollywood. Blanche Goes to Paris is the issue that you and I worked on together.
To publish.
Yeah, and now Blanche Goes to San Francisco. So how do you, I think, again, sort of a process question. People are often very interested. They want to know, like, well, how do you piece, they're asking me, how do you piece your ideas together? How do you structure a story? So I'll ask you that, like, in terms of the Blanche stories, what elements do you start with and then build from?
Well, I'd like to send her to a place that I'm somewhat familiar with, all these cities I've been to several times. And I kind of build a story around the place where she goes. And I don't know, I throw in, it's hard to call it even a process. I throw in different elements and I try to arrange them into a narrative that flows along. I don't know. It's hard to say where it all comes from. I just like to gather these ingredients together. I don't know. It's real difficult to talk about the process because it's not conscious in any real way.
Right.
but I'm always aware of what eventually comes out to be a storyline, and I very much desire to make it move along, use the visuals to make it move along. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, I think that's fair, right? Like some of it is not intentional. Like it's something that just springs out of nowhere. I've even started keeping a notebook at the side of my bed, because I'll sit up in the morning and have had some fully formed thing and just quickly jot it down. So sometimes it's hard to nail down where these things come from. And like I will even find myself revisiting something that wasn't necessarily like a plot hole, but that it's sitting there and it's like, oh, that's a great place to revisit. Like I didn't mean to do that, but there it is.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes I can let something sit for a while, and then if I come back to it, it'll hopefully resolve itself. That usually works out that way.
Yeah.
And since you asked, I wanted to show you the cover illustration.
Oh, excellent.
It's coming out backwards to you, isn't it?
No, it's I can see it. I think it just shows backwards for you.
Oh, okay. Here's the cover illustration. I don't know.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's very good. And the title page, which this story starts out with Blanche already in San Francisco, and with the actually after she returns from Kansas and the funeral of her father, and that kind of sets the idea in motion. And I decided on 1923 because that's when President Harding was in the city and where he died, and that's that connects with the death of Blanche's father and the element of spiritualism, which was incredibly popular thing at the time.
Yep.
And so those are the elements I wanted to make a little mixture of for the story.
Now we've
Dashiell Hammett, since he was living there at the time, threw him in as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that, you know, her parents are always kind of in the background because she's writing the letters. So they've kind of been off screen, but they're important to her. And what does it mean for Blanche now at this point that that her father has passed? How does that, I mean, obviously it impacts you that you lose somebody that's close to you, but how do you see that as sort of a character moment for her?
Well, I kind of saw it as a point in which she starts thinking about these things, such as that are going around at the time, such as the afterlife and communicating with the dead. She mentions that she's been skeptical of spiritualism, but she's open to it as well. She wants to see, since she's been receiving these visions of her father, she wants to see if there's anything to it. I think that's the major propulsion of the story, I think, what's going on in her head.
And how much did you have to do any research into spiritualism, or was that something that you had always was on the sort of like, I always think of you as like this, having this catalog of historical information in your mind?
Well, it does come from research, and I do have some books, a book by Houdini in which he talks about the tricks and manipulations of fake spirit mediums. And even though apparently he was always open to the idea, and he's wanted to expose the phonies in hopes of finding someone who's genuine. That never happened, unfortunately.
You know, I'm doing a series that's set in Victorian London, and it was, you know, I studied Victorian literature as part of, that was the focus of my education. And I sort of always held on to that piece that Queen Victoria was a spiritualist and always had a spiritualist on staff, and let that kind of guide her decisions, especially after the death of her husband. And it's just fascinating how that kind of lingers over a good portion of history there.
Yeah, it seems to flourish during and after any war.
Yeah. And so to that, you know, obviously the Blanche stories are kind of falling after World War One.
Right.
We're kind of coming, well, I don't know that you'll, you know, we've talked about it maybe a little bit, but I don't know, will Blanche make it to like the Great Depression, or what do you see in Blanche's future?
Gosh, well, I do have other stories in mind, and yeah, I've been kind of making notes on a story where she returns to Kansas during the Dust Bowl period. You know, it's all very vague at the moment, but I can see that's where she'd be going next.
So that is where she would go next?
Yes, yes, for sure.
And I imagine then if she's going back to Kansas that we would meet some of her family as well.
Yes, I envision her as an only child. I don't think she has any brothers or sisters, but there's definitely other family members that I would want to bring in. And since this is the Midwest in the 1930s, I'm sure there's historical characters that would enter into it. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet.
This is exciting. You know, I'm always I even just in sort of pulling out the books and looking at them for our talk today, I tangibly remember when I got the first issue of Blanche Goes to New York. And I remember the shop, I remember where it was, I remember what the day was like. And so like, Blanche is just ingrained in my mind. And so it's always exciting to know that ideas are percolating and that there's more Blanche that will come. And, you know, I'm always happy to talk Blanche with you and find a way to make a new Blanche issue happen if we can.
Oh, well, thank you, Craig. I really appreciate that. Much appreciated.
Especially because I think, you know, as you know, I'm interested in sort of like historical fiction. And then I think there's this other piece, and I say these things, and I don't know if you think about like what the categorizations that you would put on Blanche are, but I always say historical fiction and then a little bit of speculative fiction, because there are elements to the stories that are obviously not historical, but are like fictional and fun.
Yeah, the New York's volume was definitely speculative and fantastical.
Yeah, and Paris has a little bit of that too, like the ship, the airship,
floating orb. Yeah.
But is that how you would classify Blanche, or what are your thoughts on what the genre for Blanche is?
Yeah, I lean more toward historical fiction, and I don't, and I'm a little wary of bringing any kind of sci-fi or fantasy element into it, although I've done that, because once you open that door, then anything can happen. I want to stick more toward observable reality, but who knows?
I think that is also really true to the character, though, because that keeps it grounded in the historical part. And I think, you know, our lives are interesting and mysterious without the intrusion of these other things. But but at the same time, like I think, you know, she's sort of skirting on the edge of those things in terms of how she's learning about the world and finding herself in it.
Yes, exactly. Well, We'll see how it goes.
Well, Rick, I've been keeping the chats to about 30 minutes, and so I don't want to hold you. I know you got to get back to your drawing table.
My drawing table as you speak.
But I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me, and you know, obviously I'm a huge fan of Blanche, and always excited, like I said, to help usher a new chapter into the world. And I just really appreciate you being a part of this Kickstarter and creating more Blanche, and just like I think you're a good spirit and a good community member to have in the larger world of comics. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you for all you do too. I really enjoyed working on the Bronte volume, and I'm eager to work with you on any project.
Well, I'm anxiously awaiting the plot outline for Blanche Goes to Kansas.
Great. Sure.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
Bye.